It's finally here. We are finally doing Gravity Rush 2. Apologies it took so long. As you can see, I've kind of moved into a new place. So let's start with the story. How did you get in here?
I heard you were doing a Gravity Rush 2 review.
Okay, the more the merrier, I guess. Let's make a start. Let's get my locks changed. Mere days after the events of Gravity Rush 1, Kat and Sid find themselves far removed from the floating city of Hexville because they apparently got sucked into a gravity storm while tracking down some orphans. Kat appears to have lost Dusty in the storm, and without her cat companion by her side, she's forced to work for a group of miners who make her sleep in the duck shed, and it's at this point that I'll bring up the fact that ducks are known to participate in gang rape. Just saying. Without her gravity-shifting powers, Kat can't do shit except run and jump. She can't even perform her basic kicks because her daily food ration consists of 2 measly stinking croissants. Seriously, croissants are mostly air. They shouldn't even be classified as food. The lack of powers kind of threw me at the start, and I jumped straight off the nearest ledge and went plummeting into the abyss. You'd think after losing her power she'd have at least learned to use ladders, but no such luck, I'm afraid. She can run slightly faster than she could in Gravity Rush 1, so I guess that's something, right? Let's continue with the story. My misery of having to walk everywhere didn't last long, because it turns out Dusty was there all along, just being nursed by Cece, who becomes important later on in the story, and when the Nevi inevitably attack, Kat and Dusty reunite and plunge straight into a QuickTime event. Oh boy. You're then forced to undertake a bunch of tutorials, and I do mean forced. You literally cannot move until you follow the on-screen instructions. I tried switching the difficulty to hard, hoping that it would make the tutorials go away, but no dice, I'm afraid. To be fair though, they do get less and less excruciating as the game progresses, and as far as I can remember, that QT at the start was the only one in the game. So back to the story, it turns out the tribe that took you in is being strong-armed into mining precious gems by a snake named Vogo, and Kat decides to use her powers to help mine some ore. The tribe then sets a course for the floating city of Giga Lao, am I pronouncing that right? Where the military are threatening citizens. Greed, lies, corruption, it's basically capitalism at its worst, and what's more, there's a terrorist organisation called the Angry Centipede who Kat chased down only to find out it was the military who were the bad guys all along. Who'da thunk it, am I right? What follows is some big conspiracy with the military and the evil council controlling them. Raven makes a return as well, although the council have managed to put a mind control device on her face while she was stuffing it with food. Yeah, that's literally what happened, and Kat has to beat the shit out of her to make her snap out of it. She then assists Kat for the rest of the game, and unlike NPCs in a lot of games I've played, she's actually useful. In fact, she's now one of my favourite characters. So there's now this big class war going on between the rich and the poor that Kat gets caught up in the middle of. The military play dirty and kidnap her friends, and she has to infiltrate their flying fortress with Raven in order to save them. I don't really remember the details, but with Kat's help and a small coup, Lisa, who was the leader of the Banga miners, takes over as ruler of Giga Lao. So the council run away with their tails between their legs, but before Kat has time to take them down, they get eaten along with Cece, who is Lisa's frail adopted daughter. Eaten by what, I hear you cry? A city. That's retarded, I also hear you cry. Well, apparently the Nevi have possessed a city in the Rift Plains and brought it to life as some gigantic monstrosity which Kat and Raven managed to put to sleep. They then bust inside the sleeping city with the help of Sid to rescue Cece, but when they destroy the evil-looking core inside the city, they're flung across time and space, and Kat wakes up back in Hexville, where the first game took place. Also, I think Sid dies or something. Okay, so now begins the latter half of the game. Robots now police the city alongside the actual police, and there's a new shifter in town named Carly Angel. Don't let her stupid name fool you, she is brutally strong and a pain in the ass to fight when she inevitably turns against Kat later on. Apparently 3 years have passed in Hexville since Kat left, even though to her it was only a few weeks, meaning that Hexville and Giga Lao exist in different timelines. We come across characters from the first game, including Newton Echo, who are now grown up, married and about to have a kid, Unica, aka Sea Wasp, who is still a barrel of laughs, although at least she's on our side this time, and Permit, a character I don't remember, but Kat seems to recognise her, so she must have been somewhat important. Her home in the sewer has also been repurposed as some sort of sewer, I guess. Yeah, I can kind of see the logic here. So she goes in search of a new home.
Whoa! Spoilers!
Wait, what do you mean spoilers?
I haven't played this far.
Get the fuck out. Come back in part 2! God's sake, amateurs. Right, so anyway,
I'll tag in. Couldn't give a shit about spoilers.
How does everyone keep getting in here?
I heard the new Radiohead song and I had to come tell you about it.
Okay, fine, whatever. Ruben's tagging in, guys. Good. So as I was saying, she goes in search of a new home with no luck, but she does come across a mysterious man whose airboat has broken down. He keeps prattling on about his daughter, and Kat decides to help him by ferrying him wherever he needs to go using her gravity powers. In return, he buys her a new bed for her sewer home, and she's finally able to get some rest. Until she learns that he's actually Dr. Brahman, genius inventor and running for mayor of Hexville. It also turns out that Carly, Hexville's new saviour, is his youngest daughter and works for him, as does Chaz from the previous game. Yeah, I don't remember him either. Once Sid's underling, he is now a lieutenant, outranking his former superiors. Kat being, well, Kat, decides to help Brahman's campaign by fighting off the terrorists that seek to assassinate him and retrieve a case that the terrorists have in their possession. It's at this point that we find out from the head terrorist, who turns out to be Unica, that Carly and the Doctor are evil. Kat has just helped him get his hands on a crystal that allows him to freeze time. Apparently he accidentally froze his daughter in a crystal years ago, and by stopping time he can... well, that part isn't really explained properly. I think he just wants to freeze time for shits and giggles. Kat refuses to help him with his twisted and slightly nonsensical evil plan and is made a fugitive from the law. While on the run, she's approached by a mysterious robot which seems to want to help her, and the two set about sneaking her through the streets. They get caught by Carly, but Lieutenant Chaz shows up in the nick of time and uncovers the truth via a video he found of Carly and her dad doing some criminally things, and the heat instantly shifts from Kat to Carly. Carly isn't one to take this lying down though, and Kat has to fight her. During the fight, Raven appears with Cece through a massive vagina-shaped rip in the space-time continuum, and the two shifters overpower Carly, causing her to flee with her tail between her legs. All is right with the world again for about 12 hours, but in the very next episode, Carly and her psycho dad come back for Cece. It turns out Cece is actually Durga, the Doctor's daughter, and Carly's older sister, although having been in a different timeline for God knows how long, Carly is now older. Cece remembers her sister and transforms into the psychotic Durga Angel. Kat tries to snap Cece out of it with no joy, and the two angels easily defeat Kat and Raven, knocking them unconscious and causing them to go into a sort of dream sequence where Kat has to fight a doppelganger of herself. This sequence unlocks Panther mode, a sort of god mode that's even more awkward to control than regular shifting, and like the special attacks, it hardly ever becomes available for use anyway, so much for that. Also, don't think this mode makes you invincible, because it fucking doesn't, especially when you play on the harder difficulty. After the two shifters wake up, it's up to Kat, Raven, Unica and Permit to take down the two angels using any means necessary, except Cece's still in there, so rather than fight the angels, you have to fight Unica and Permit to protect Cece. Not an easy task when you've got Carly hot on your heels trying to kill you, and the person you're trying to protect is firing projectiles at you the whole time. Kat still can't get through to Cece, but in the nick of time, Lisa shows up through another space-time rip, but still no sign of Sid. She calls out to her daughter, and while the two sides of Cece/Durga wrestle to decide who is the real one, Kat and Raven take out Carly. The problem is, when they go to deliver the killing blow, Cece/Durga jumps in the way to protect her sister. In a desperate attempt to save her sister, Carly spontaneously transforms into— oh my fucking Christ, what is that thing? Yeah, so Carly basically becomes Tetsuo from Akira and transforms into a hideous monstrosity that swallows Cece. It's then up to Kat, Raven, Unica and Permit to defeat the monster and save Cece, thus foiling Brahman's plan, saving the city and ending the story. Well, not quite. The credits roll, but we're actually only 3/4 of the way through the game. So, Lisa and Raven both mention to Kat that it was a man who brought them to Hexville. Lisa reveals that this man was none other than Alias, a terrorist who Kat defeated in the last game. Alias appeared to have died when he fell into a garbage compactor in the first game, but it seems he's been helping from beyond the grave for some unknown reason, because it was also him that sent the robot to help Kat earlier in the story. So in the final chapter, Kat comes across a shining golden girl who speaks some unknown language. She tells Kat, via telepathy I guess, that a huge gravity storm under Hexville will swallow it up in about a year. Kat doesn't know how she's going to save it, but she does manage to talk to Alias, who tells her that her answers lie up the world pillar. So, up she goes, accompanied by Raven, and I notice Raven's really changed her tune since the last game. She talks a hell of a lot about friendship and sticking together, considering how cold she was in the first game. Maybe she had some really good sex or something, but whatever the reason, it's useful having her around. I kinda knew we'd end up going up the world pillar at some point. I mean, we went down it in the last game, there was really only one way we could have gone from here. So at the top of the pillar, the two girls end up in the kingdom of Eto, and suddenly Kat is now Queen Allure of Eto. What the hell happened? I can't even shift. Where are Raven and Dusty? Why am I dressed like the Pope? Who is this little shit, and why does he keep calling me auntie? So we're forced into this long-ass sequence which reminds me of the Desmond sections from the Assassin's Creed games, but thank Christ we only have to do it once. In this section, all we can do is walk around, sit on the throne, listen to people's drivel, read books, and get in the animus. I mean bed at the end of the day. We can't change costumes or even run or kick, but we can use the camera. Hell, you can use the camera just about anywhere in this fucking game, even the brink, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So apparently Kat, or Queen Allure as she was originally known, has been gone for 100 years. Time evidently passes more slowly the further up the pillar you go, so what was a couple of months for Kat down in Hexville translated to 100 years up in Eto. It also means that the storm that's imminently going to swallow Hexville won't reach Eto for a millennium. What I don't understand is how anyone expects me to believe that Kat was a queen before she fell from Eto and woke up in Hexville at the start of Gravity Rush 1. Kat is nowhere near stuck up enough to be a queen. I know she was a benevolent queen, but may I remind you that the Kat I know lived in a fucking sewer, not to mention how helpful, practical and borderline submissive she is. Queen Allure would have been weighted on hand and foot her entire life. Can you see my issue here? Anyway, I guess I got no choice but to believe it because that's what the plotline is. Kat is Queen Allure. She's also very sick and suffering from amnesia, not being able to remember her adventures in Hexville. What's more, her cunt nephew, who I'm just going to call Prince Joffrey, won't let her leave the castle because he's supposedly concerned for her well-being, so Kat has to piece together what's going on by herself. This road eventually leads her to enter the restricted part of the castle where she finds Raven chained up in a dungeon with Dusty and the bird. Suddenly, she remembers who she is and resolves to break them out, but first she has to uncover the truth. She overhears her advisor talking with Alias, supposedly back from the dead. Her advisor admits to Alias that he betrayed Queen Allure 100 years ago. Now he regrets his decision and wants to help her, but before he has a chance to be useful, Prince Joffrey kills him and sets his Nevi on Kat. Before he dies, he calls upon the creator god Bit to show Kat the way. Meanwhile, Joffrey releases a powerful being known as electricity because he wants to destroy Hexville. Why, you ask? Well, why does anyone do anything? It's because a little voice told him to, obviously. So Bit tells Raven to go back to Hexville to buy Kat some time by holding off the wrath of electricity while he takes Kat to the brink where she meets up with Sid. Sort of. He's not actually there, but she can talk to him. So we're back in the brink from the first game, and you know what that means? Selfies! Nah, I'm just kidding. Block puzzles! These were a bit of a headache, but you get a bit of exposition after each puzzle, so I guess they're not entirely pointless like the ones in the last game. Kat protests that she doesn't want to see her old memories because Queen Allure was a boring person, and I completely agree with that sentiment. But Sid insists that Queen Allure is part of herself and that she must learn from it or some shit. So we do. We learn that Sid was Queen Allure's top servant and best friend, and her advisor betrayed her because she knew about the gravity storm and wanted to save the people of Hexville by evacuating them all to Eto. The advisors felt that Eto couldn't accommodate that many people and that they should instead leave them to die. So when no one's looking, he throws her off the edge, seeing as she's the only member of the royal family who doesn't have a guardian, so she's probably adopted anyway, but before she hits the ground, Bit sees her, and a cat comes to her rescue, and that's how she ends up in Hexville with no memory. What I like about this sequence is that it also confirms that Kat's default costume was just her royal underwear. This flashback shows Sid supposedly being assassinated trying to save her, so it confused me as to how he got to Hexville. And where does the detective thing come in? Did he lose his memory too? If he has been protecting her the whole time, he's been doing a shit job. The flashback then turns into some sort of creators convention, and the creepy old guy from the first game flashes Kat one last time so she can get back to Hexville and stop electricity from destroying it. We even get to play as Raven for a bit, which is cool if a bit short-lived. So Kat arrives back in Hexville where everything has gone to shit. Raven's down, Unica and Permit are out, everything's fucked. Thus begins the most ridiculous boss fight of the game. A woman who can control lightning, make infinite copies of herself, and annihilate your health bar in 2 hits. More fool me for playing on the hardest difficulty setting, I suppose, but this fight took me many attempts. Because I had to fling unexploded bombs at her whilst avoiding her many clones getting from bomb to bomb, seeking shelter wherever I could and praying that their lightning strikes hit something taller first. Stressful. Very stressful. So after Cat finally defeats electricity and bitch slaps some sense into Prince Joffrey, he has a mental breakdown and fuses with his guardian, creating a giant monster which is the final boss. This boss is absolute piss compared to electricity. Not easy by any means, and horrendously long because the fucker can steal your powers, regenerate, and kill you almost instantly if you get close at the wrong time. But I was so in the zone after the electricity fight that I managed to beat the boss in 2 tries. So at the climax of the fight, it appears that Cat's been beaten, just having had all of her powers stolen, and the voice from the darkness that told her nephew to destroy Hexville tries to tempt her into giving up. She's having none of it, and the people of Hexville all come out to show their support. Alright, you know how this goes, it's an anime game. Their support gives her newfound strength, and she somehow gets her powers back out of sheer stubbornness, combining with both Dusty and Raven's bird, taking down the monster once and for all. Sort of. She actually still hasn't beaten it, but she knows what she must do. Alias arrives on the scene and asks her if she really has to do it, but without too much drama, she dives right into that motherfucker and turns herself into a black hole, destroying the beast from within and saving the city at the cost of her own life. The game ends a year later, where Hexville is more or less rebuilt and Raven is inhabiting Cat's old sewer house and working for the police. Oh, and Sid. Sid's alive, guys. Woo, interactive credits. And that's the story. Ken, you can come back in now. Join us for part 2, where we'll be discussing the game.
AJ, I don't mean to be the bearer of bad news. Your TV's been stolen. You've been burgled.
Fuck!